So you just heard from Seattle City Council member Sarah Nelson, who was one of the sponsors of the legislation to allow the city attorney to prosecute drug possession and open public drug use cases. But what do public defenders have to say about drug laws in Seattle, and specifically what happened yesterday at the City Council? Our reporter, Kate Stone, joins us now with that part.
Yeah, so I listened to the entire city council meeting, so y'all didn't have to. And I know that you guys have talked about this at length, so I won't get into the nitty-gritty details. But essentially, as you heard from Councilmember Nelson, this was intended to put us in compliance, Seattle in compliance with the overall state law, so that Ann Davison, the city attorney, could prosecute people for drug possession and open drug use. So that being said, there was no some of the public comment period, people during the public comment brought this up about the legislation and how it differs from the state law, which, as we know, has a diversion first, treatment forward option. So this was something that was said at the public comment period.
This legislation does't provide any funding for diversion to treatment beyond property tax exemptions for treatment facilities.
So that's one of the main things that people like the King County Public Defenders Union has a problem with, is that this legislation is not exactly a copy-paste of the state law, and it doesn't address treatment options. There was an amendment put forth by Councilmember Strauss that would have encouraged treatment options, but there's no actual money to do that. And so what the council members were essentially saying, and what the Public Defenders Union was saying, was this is essentially carte blanche to arrest people for doing drugs. And their argument was that they will only be arresting certain types of people.
Okay, so what do public defenders say? And again, understand their position as public defenders.
Correct.
That is their job. Okay.
Correct.
But what do they suggest should happen if you have a repeat offender who refuses to leave, who will continue to use drugs openly, and will refuse to get treatment? I mean, there's not a lot of treatment, but there are offers of treatment, and there are some treatment services available. If there is that refusal, what do they suggest happen?
Now, that is a tall order to ask the Public Defenders Union
Correct.
or anyone to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution for the
I
drug
just asked
crisis.
Sarah Nelson that exact question, and she couldn't answer it.
She's a city council member.
And she couldn't answer it.
Exactly. So asking other people to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution for the drug crisis that is hitting Seattle is a tall order, shall we say. However, they and this actually
hang on a second.
Go ahead.
Sarah Nelson, from what I heard, said the goal would be to try to get them into these pretrial diversion and treatment before, to
try.
Exactly. So, yes. So what is the public defender's position?
Right. Here's the problem with that. How? Because the King County, Ann Davison said this herself, the King County Jail does not book people for possession. So if you have someone on 3rd Avenue who's potentially unhoused, you arrest them, you can't actually get them into treatment if you're just releasing them immediately back onto the streets. So what is the pathway to treatment? And that was the question that I was asking, and I could not get an answer for. And the Public Defenders Union was also asking that question. Here's why they think this is happening. They believe that the intent of this is not actually to prosecute people. Well, it is to prosecute people, but not actually to fix the problem. It's to sweep the streets, because Seattle is about to be in the forefront of a lot of national and international coverage.
We have the Major League Baseball game coming up. We have the World Cup partially being hosted in Seattle.
So that's Molly Gilbert, president of the King County Public Defenders Union. And actually, this goes back.
I mean, that all sounds great. Hang on, I gotta stop
ahead.
though, because there were nearly 30 mayors from all around the state, not the city of Seattle, but mayors from around the state, that asked the legislature. They were hacked off that the legislature did not come up with a Blake decision fix because of rampant drug use in public in their own cities. So this is not just a Seattle problem. Mayors from around the state wanted something. The state legislature came up with a compromise bill, and Seattle has gone its own way.
Correct. But the Seattle bill the one that just failed, did not have an emphasis on treatment or diversion. You can read it yourself. It's public record. It did not have that. That is what they are concerned about. That is what that was Molly Gilbert, president of the King County Public Defenders Union. That is what she's concerned about. And here is the real concern that they have. And this actually goes back to my coverage on the Vancouver drug decriminalization, because Alex Peterson, Councilmember Peterson, last night said this amounts to decriminalization because we now cannot prosecute drug cases. And the reason that Councilmember Lewis voted against it, the reason that Molly Gilbert, the Public Defenders Union, is against these types of things is because they believe that it was fast-tracked. It didn't even have a committee hearing. There was no discussion on this. And so here's what she thinks will be the outcome.
SPD will not be walking through Frat Row arresting people who are using drugs. They're not going to be going into Ballard nightclubs and concert venues to see people who are doing lines off the toilet.
They believe this is targeted. They believe this is targeted to sweep the streets of unhoused people doing drugs on 3rd Avenue.
And I would be the first one to agree with that if it weren't for other mayors from other cities that don't have 3rd Avenue who are wanting the same thing.
That's fair. However, if you think about it and you look at the statement from the council members, Nelson, Peterson, and City Attorney Ann Davison, last night, they said the King County prosecuting attorney still has the authority. I talked to Casey McNerthy. He says,
they don't.
No, we don't.
They don't.
We have to be contracted.
Yes, exactly.
So essentially, yes, this is
a big cluster.
It is, but asking anyone outside of the city council and the city leaders to come up with a solution for this. However, the argument made on the other side, I understand what Councilmember Nelson is saying, but the argument being made on the other side, because we want to give that viewpoint, is that this is going to be a tool for SPD to round up people. But the fact that the King County Jail is not actually going to book anyone, it's simply going to push people aside and get them out of an area. It's essentially a sweep. That is their argument.